This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus. I wanted to remind you that the show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to the show if he or she would like more information. Thank you. Hello, this is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host at ADHD Focus, and today we'll be talking with Alan Brown, who has come up with some great strategies to deal with the things that all of us with ADHD face every day. Struggling with organization, time management, getting started on tasks, not following the squirrels. If you have ADD, you know that these things are there every day. Alan is an entrepreneur, ADHD productivity coach, and the host of Crusher TV at www.crushertv.com. He's also the creative force behind ADD Crusher, which is an award-winning video series for ADHD teens and adults. Alan was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, and he found that it was difficult for him to learn the coping strategies just from books. So he developed a number of these, which he calls brain hacks. Get in there and change the programming. And he shares these on his TV show, his video series, and at the websites. You can get a great start to figuring out what to do about things with ADD in his free ebook, 5 Things You're Doing Every Day That Makes Your ADHD Worse. And that can be found at addcrusher.com. Alan, it's great to have you with me on the show today.
It's wonderful to be here, David. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So let's start talking about some of the things around time management, for instance. And I know you have a good perspective on each of these challenges and kind of the stages that you see them. So tell me a bit about those.
Well, I think that, and I'll right off the bat, I'll borrow a term from Dr. Ned Hallowell that he coined screen sucking. And I think we ADDers do way too much of that. And by screen sucking, he means our use of screens, not just TV, but our gadgets,
Absolutely.
Our tablets, our iPads, and, even movie theaters and video games. And I think, I always kind of say, hey, if you've, just kind of thrown up your hands and said, gosh, I don't have enough time to do all the things I need to do, which us, we ADDers, we never have enough time, right? We never have enough time. I always say, well, let me ask you, how much time are you spending consuming media? Because chances are, if you're spending 3 hours a day on media, that's 3 hours a day you can't be doing things that help you better get things done and manage your time. So to me, whenever I think of time management, I think of sort of self-management and making sure that you're managing the things that you're doing.
So how did that show up for you before you were diagnosed, and then afterwards, and then strategies to get it the best possible that hopefully you're close to now?
Yeah. Like you, David, I was diagnosed later in life. I was diagnosed at 36, and it certainly explained a lot. It explained why I spent a lot of time in my 20s as I was doing drugs, and I was actually engaged in some crime and doing a lot of alcohol abuse. And, there really wasn't any time management for me prior to my getting myself cleaned up. And even when I finally did get cleaned up at around the age of 30 and finally got an entry-level job in the advertising business, I was not managing my time really in any smart way. And I was just running around basically what you call it, management by crisis, right? It's like, wait, hey, where's that thing? That thing is due. Oh, yeah, that's right. That was my time management. And I know a lot of our listeners can identify with this kind of, just constantly, oh, what did I forget now? Or, oh, my goodness, that thing to do, et cetera.
Putting out the fires all the time.
Exactly. And but then, I kind of started to teach myself, and once I had the diagnosis, I was able to kind of, okay, Alan, you have a brain that works this way, or rather doesn't work this way. Let's make sure that you're accounting for that, and let's make sure that you are setting alarms, writing a lot of notes. I write a lot of notes for myself, and I set alarms in my smartphone for things. For instance, I set, before our talk today, before getting on with you today, I had 2 reminders that popped up, alarms that popped up on my phone. It says prep for David Pomeroy. And that's just one of the little time management things that I do to make sure that I am not forgetting or blowing off things. That may sound like personal organization, but to me, that is managing my time better, so that I'm not scrambling at the last minute to do things.
I've found that many people use the alarms, and I think we're so used to all the bings and dongs that our phones make that it's easier to either ignore it after a week or just, oh yeah, I'll get to it, and you turn it off, which, of course, I'll get to it means next week because it's forgotten 2 minutes later. And so many people are finding that setting an alarm as a vibration gets their attention better, whether it's one of those bracelet things or even the vibration on your phone. It's really hard to ignore your phone bouncing around the table vibrating.
Interesting.
And that's going to get your attention, I think, better than just one of the noises. So that's a secondary strategy in the time management, the reminders. And I definitely think reminders, calendars, things like that are certainly central to that self-management, which is the time part.
Yeah, I call those things external structures or scaffolding because, our brain is not equipped like the neurotypical brain to have all these things built in. A really good neurotypical brain will have those alarms built in, and they'll say, hey, it's 10 minutes before 1 o'clock. I need to get ready for so-and-so. But we don't have those. So we need to put sort of external scaffolding around all this stuff. And as you say, whether it's alarms or notes or calendaring things or having a planner, we have to make sure that we're super aware that we don't have that equipment in our brain, and we got to have it externally.
Right, and certainly many people, most of the people I talk with ADHD, find that if there's a schedule that's externally imposed, I have to meet someone, or for me, I've got appointments and certain times I have to be ready, that helps. But then you're on vacation, or you're between jobs, or, okay, now it's the evening and there's no schedule except what I intended, things tend to drift off and fall apart. So one of the other things, and this gets to some of that time management as well, is knowing there are many things that need to be done, getting started, picking which one's important, and then getting started on it is a tough place for many of us. What kinds of strategies do you use on those?
Yeah, and this is also known as ignition, right? It's
right.
Like Dr. Thomas Brown phrases it. Getting started on things. For me, it's kind of digging into what is the reason why I'm not getting started on this. And I find that there are really 3 main reasons for procrastination. One is fear. Okay, perfectionism is a type of fear, right? I'm afraid that it's not going to be just the way I want it. So you know what? I'm not going to bother starting it right now. I'm going to wait until I can figure out a way to do it perfectly, whatever. Or fear of some confrontation, or fear of outright failure. Then there's what I call disarray, and that is I have no idea what to work on. I've got 33 to-dos on my list, and when I look at that list, I get so depressed and freaked out and saddened by, there's all those things that I was supposed to have done last week about it. It just freaks you out. So there's that disarray and not knowing which of these things should I really be working on. So you just kind of freeze out. And as a result of that paralysis, you sort of go off and you will escape to something. Like, well, I'll just do this one easy thing that is not due right now, but it's easy. And then the other part of disarray is once you decide what you're going to work on, how to start it, especially if it's a big complex thing. And then the last kind of area of procrastination is what I call indifference, which is, we ADDers don't get really excited about doing the laundry, whereas maybe a neurotypical will say, oh yeah, laundry, oh yeah, baby, I can't wait to fold all those shirts so perfectly crispy. Yeah. I love that stuff. We're like, oh, laundry, or dishes, or washing the car. It's just, it doesn't have the interest for us to fire up our neurotransmitters. But if I were to just kind of take one of those to delve into a little bit more, like disarray is a favorite one of mine, because you mentioned, for instance, being able to prioritize. This really is a big area where we get paralyzed a lot. So let's say you're looking at your to-do list, and it's usually probably more than 33 items long, right? It could be a whole bunch of things. And maybe you have multiple lists, and you've got a bunch of stickies all over the place reminding you of various things that aren't getting done. And when you start to feel this freaked outness, and you're starting to feel a little bit paralyzed because you're like, well, if I work on this one, then this one over here is going to bite me in the butt.
Right.
That's right, I got these over here, and I forgot, I got to get back. So, well, if you look at these and you ask yourself, if the gods of doing things only allowed you to do 2 things today, just ask yourself that question and then try to pick 2. Now, sometimes that's hard to do, but you got to put some kind of filter on it. Another filter you can put on it is what's called the 3-3-3 rule. This was taught to me by a former president of the National Association of Professional Organizers. And she uses the strategy called 3-3-3, where you look at your to-do list and you ask yourself, okay, are any of my to-dos due in the next 3 hours? All right? Because if any of them are due in the next 3 hours, let's pick one of those. And then what's due in 3 days? And then what's due in 3 weeks or 3 months? That's a great, simple filter to be able to put on things to get you out of that freaked out feeling of, oh, my God, what the heck do I work on? And too often, because you get freaked out, you end up just procrastinating and shutting off your ignition.
Yep, and not recognizing the consequences of not doing it unless there's a gun to your head. Oh, my goodness, I got to have that done tomorrow, instead of 2 weeks before thinking, yeah, that's a big deal. I'm going to be chairing a meeting. I better be putting in some time on it, because you can chair the meeting if you start the night before, but it's not going to be as well put together as if you've been thinking about it and refining it over those couple of weeks. So the consequences get lost, and we don't think about those. So the 3-3-3 rule sounds like a really helpful strategy.
Right, and then the other part of disarray is, okay, let's say that I have chosen one of these many to-dos, but it has to be that one thing, like you say, preparing for a big board meeting, or starting a really big project that has lots of moving parts, or writing a difficult a paper, or maybe even a really tough email that is going to be, very involved and tricky and all that. And you look at it and you say, you know what? I don't even know where to start this thing. And that's another form of getting stuck, right? And you're going to shut off your ignition and go, you know what? I'm going to actually put this off till tomorrow, because I think by tomorrow I should really have figured out exactly how to pursue this thing. And this is what I call the myth of the magic bullet. Meaning, we think that when there's a really complex project, that we should be able to see, all right, first I do this, then I do that, then I do the next thing, and then 3A is over here and 3B is over there, and then what'll happen there is at that particular point. This is kind of, this is chess playing. Gary Kasparov may be able to think 12 moves ahead, but I tell you, I can't think more than 1 move ahead. And so when I look
maybe
at
a second.
I get freaked. Yeah, maybe a second, but I get freaked out about, man, I just don't know how this thing's going to get done. And I'm going to quote Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm probably going to misquote him, but he says, "You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step."
Yes,
Something
absolutely.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you do, just give yourself permission to just start it. You know what? Just start it. Set a timer for 5 minutes and just say, you know what? I'm just going to start this for 5 minutes. I don't have any expectation of success, let alone finishing it. I'm just going to start it. When you do that and you step up on that first step, maybe you get up on the second step, now you can see more of the staircase, right? We think that the insights that are going to, just absolutely unlock the keys to getting this thing done are going to be available to us or visible to us when we're sitting here staring at this thing on our to-do list. These insights only come when you are in it, when you start and you go,
exactly.
I see, now that I'm on step 3, now I can see how steps 4, 5, and 6 might go, but I don't know for sure, so let me just keep on going. And I might make a wrong turn, but that's okay. I'll come back and I'll make another turn. And this is a big thing that we need to remind ourselves it's okay to just start and see what happens.
Just start. And I've found certainly that sometimes where I've started ends up being step 3, because as I get into the idea of it, I think, oh yeah, there are these other things that need to start before. I need to have an introduction to this part. So it doesn't matter that you figure out which is step 1 before you start. Just do it.
Yep.
Put down something. And then as the flow gets going, you can figure out, oh, this is really a subtopic. This is the bigger part I needed to do.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the things I've found helpful in that is mind mapping software.
Yes.
Inspiration is one. Simple Mind is one that's an app on the phone or tablet. Or
I use Simple Mind. Yep.
Yeah, it's great to put down one thing, and then you spin off parts from that, and spin off subparts, and then hit outline, and poof, it's in the word flow. And I think many of us with ADD, thinking in terms of major points and subpoints and just setting it out like that in words is really difficult. But the mapping visually, we can take advantage of our associational mind, where we jump around, and people can't figure out, well, what do you mean we're going to be there? 2 days later, they've gone through all the sequential steps. Oh, yeah. How'd you know we were going to end up here? We've gone over the mountain by connecting stars in the sky and come down in the right place.
And I think the great thing about the mind maps, too, and as I mentioned, I use Simple Minds when I'm confronted with a really, really tricky big thing that I really have no idea where it will go. I just start a mind map, is that it speaks to our visual spatial nature. We tend to be visual spatial processors. We are not the type that can just sit there and do this linear analysis of things, especially just in our mind with no paper and pen. So the mind maps just bring things into almost, not 3 dimensions, but 2 dimensions, and let you see shapes and the physical relationships. Oh, this goes above that. This goes over here to the right. That is a great, great tool, and I encourage anyone to try Simple Minds. There's a free version of it that you can use on your computer, and it's actually fun to use.
Yeah. There's another technique I learned actually was about something like a half-day conference on time management for time-challenged people, and it's called a focus map, where you make a central box that has vacation. And then you get 4 boxes around that, and one of them might be clothes. The other is travel. What do you do for the house while you're gone? And then you and you can lay this out just on a yellow pad. Then you start putting items for each of those areas. And instead of having this big list of stuff that's occurred to you kind of in a jumble, you've got specific things laid out. Then you can take a different color pen and figure, okay, I've got to figure out where we're going before I know what clothes I'm going to pack. Then how long? Well, then I know how long to stop the mail or have someone feed the cat or whatever. So it's a way of exploding the list into parts and prioritizing. And if one of those boxes has so many lines you can't see around it, that becomes its own box, center box. You don't add more than 4 boxes to any one center. So it helps organize our disorganized mind that just starts thinking of all the things to do and makes this list that is totally random and not separated. So that's another.
That this also helps you remember things, because when you put things into that visual medium by drawing it out like that, it helps you store that information more solidly.
Yeah, and I think that's one maybe advantage the focus map has. You can certainly do the same thing essentially with a simple mind, but I find it's different if I'm writing it down. Gets into my brain differently than if I'm just clicking things on the computer keyboard or on my phone.
There's some research that supports that actually writing with your hand does process the information more thoroughly than say, typing it or clicking. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. So how about avoiding distractions, whether it's the noise around you or thoughts in your head, and keeping the focus on what you're doing now? What kind of things help with that?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic for ADHD, but for productivity generally, because the brain hack that I developed years ago when I was doing my advertising career was if I had to point to one thing that really helped change the trajectory of my career dramatically, it was this. And I call it do what you're doing now. And it sounds, kind of almost silly, simple, but I'll explain it. So here's the typical ADHD scenario. I sit down and I need to write this very tough email that I've been putting off because it's a little bit tricky, but I got to get this thing written. And I sit down to do it, and then I remember, oh, that's right, I got to respond to that text from so-and-so. So I pick up my phone and I do that and I do that, and I get back to put my hands back on the keyboard to start typing this email. I go, oh, you know what? Let me just check my Facebook one more time, on my Instagram and my Twitter. Just one more time, because there might have been something that popped up in the last half hour. Let me just do that. All right, okay, that's me. Okay, let me come back, and then you get back into this, and then your phone rings, and it's it's your friend, but you answer it anyway, even though it's probably not urgent, and so and then something out of your control happens, like, your boss knocks on the door and says, hey, can you help me with so-and-so? And an hour goes by, and because you have allowed all these things to interfere with you, and the reason that we have been called away from that tough email is because those other things were more interesting at the moment. Because that email's not all that interesting. That's like hard work.
Yes.
But if there's a text that just came in, that's a great excuse to not be doing this email. Hey, I got to answer the text, right? So this is a bunch of baloney that we do. And even the boss who comes to your door, by the way, if it's not an urgent thing, you can say, you want to talk about that? Great. Actually, let's talk in about 20 minutes, because I'm going to bang out this email here.
Right.
And we don't do that because we almost are begging to be dragged away from the tough thing that we are doing. So this is the epitome of distractions, wasting our time, and at the end of the day, what do you end up with? You end up with this thing not being done. You end up more frustrated with yourself. Your to-do list has not gotten any smaller, and the person who's supposed to receive that email, they might be getting ticked off or whatever, or you could lose a sale, or you could da-da-da-da-da, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, one of those kinds of things that are the impairments of ADD. You don't get the productive stuff done, and then other people get down on you, you feel worse, et cetera.
Right. And at the same time, you feel like, but I had all this other stuff going on. Well, you didn't. Because what you did was you sat down to work on something you knew was important. And if you really stepped back and looked at all the little things that keep interrupting you, the little escapes that you choose, you could certainly acknowledge that those are not important. But here's the trick. Here's the brain hack to get around this. It is forcefully labeling the thing that you've decided to work on as, this is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm doing now. And anything else that comes in, like that text from your friend or your quick thought that, let me check my Facebook again, those are BS. You'll forgive my French abbreviation. But that stuff is BS that you are not doing now. You have decided that you're going to do this other thing, and those things can wait. So it's only by forcefully labeling the thing that you want to work on as, this is what I'm doing now, and then telling yourself every time you get tempted, and you will be tempted, to go off on something else, just say to yourself, and I do it out loud. I do it on an airplane. When I open my computer at 10,000 feet and I start working, and I'm working on a presentation or a new TV show episode, I will invariably think, oh, they got Wi-Fi here on the plane. Let me go check this or that. And then I'll stop myself and I'll say, that is BS and that's not what I'm doing now. And then the person next to me says, excuse me, were you talking to me? Oh, sorry. I forgot. I thought that was talking in my own head. But anyway, if you can get into the habit of doing that, just that little brain hack, you will find that you are able to hold off these outside distractions. Now, you may ask, well, what about when your boss comes to the door? You can't just say to your boss, hey, you're BS and I'm not doing anything. No. Well, that's something that you would call important, but it's still not what you're doing now. And again, unless it's urgent, unless the boss says, Alan, there's a fire alarm going on, or Alan, you got to get your butt into this meeting right now, we need you, it's not going to be urgent. And there are going to be other kinds of things that are similar to that boss, but that's why we have stickies. You say to your boss, you know what, let's talk in 30 minutes. And you write a sticky that says, talk to the boss in 20 minutes, and then you maybe even go to your phone and you set an alarm for 20 minutes. And then you say, now I'm going to go back to this thing that I am working on, the thing that I am doing now. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what's called single tasking, because that's another way of viewing it. Forget the multitasking. It doesn't work. The research has been done. Yale, Stanford, MIT, and other top institutions have done research on multitasking. You're going to be less efficient by multitasking, although you may think you're more efficient. But the key is single tasking. And I do like 3 or 4 single tasking sessions every day between a half an hour and 90 minutes. And, boy, I tell you, when you're in a single tasking mode and you really have decided the thing that you're working on is important, and you want to get it done and you want it removed from your to-do list, when you get yourself into that brain hack kind of status, mindset, you can get so much done and not be distracted.
Right, and I think that kind of circles back onto some of the procrastination. Gee, this is difficult. This is someone I really want to work things out with, so I have to have it just set perfectly. Then, just start somewhere, and the ideas will flow. But it's so easy to think, I do need to, and having warnings of when an email comes in, to me, is one of the worst things that happen, because then, I ought to check that. I was going to respond to that. And with every time I change to a different Outlook or whatever, it takes me a while to figure out how to turn that off. But that's one of the kinds of distractions. Or your phone bings every time you get a text or another email. Well, all of them have a way to set a do not disturb, so that you'd say, for 2 hours, I'm only going to have alarms. If it's really important, someone can call back or whatever, but it may be you set someone as a priority, but it's my son who lives in Michigan, and he's usually not going to call me with some emergency. He's figured out how to deal with those things by himself, but he may text to say one thing or another that is exactly not important right now.
There you go. And look, even if the Dalai Lama were calling you, if he really had to speak with you right now, he would call a couple of times, and then he'd probably text you. And that's when you know, okay, something must be urgent. Now let me pick up this call. And I tell you mentioned notifications, and it's a really key thing. On last night's show, the topic was how to run your day like a badass. You'll forgive my French again. And we had on in the show, we had on a social media expert who talks about the many different notifications that you might not even realize you have set. Your Outlook is going to ding when your email comes up. Obviously, your phone may vibrate or jingle when you get a text, but also Facebook has a bunch of pop-up notifications.
Oh, boy, yes.
Even if you may have a New York Times or a CNN app that pops up when it has an important story or some breaking news. That all this stuff is just another reason for you to take your eyes and mind away from the important tasks that you have decided that you are going to be doing now. And the more of these notifications you can just take a few minutes to go and shut them off. It's kind of like the habit of unsubscribing from an email chain once a day. Every day unsubscribe for something. Well, maybe every time you see a notification, ask yourself, do I really need these notifications? And let me shut these off. You would find huge swaths of productivity and sanity if you unsubscribe from something every day and shut off another notification every day. You'd have some freedom.
Yes, the notification thing for me would divert me from what I need to do, because it would probably take me 25 to 30 minutes figure out how to get to where I can turn the thing off. But I can certainly say, write the sticky. And I like the idea of the sticky, not a sticky note app on my phone or computer, but a piece of paper that's sitting right there that, oh yeah, I was going to talk to the boss in 20 minutes, or this is the idea. It's important, but it's not urgent now. It's not what I'm doing now.
Right.
Right. And that's, there's a reminder. I don't have to keep thinking of it because, of course, our working memory is too leaky. That second thing falls out the back quite easily. So if there's that reminder, I wrote it down, I've got it there, I don't have to worry about it, that can definitely help you stick with what you're doing. One of the other things that I'm certainly seeing more, publicity about, more things mentioned everywhere, is the concept strategy of mindfulness. And there was a great article in the latest ADHD report that Russell Barkley edits about mindfulness and ADHD, and some of the neat research with functional MRI to be able to show that people who have developed this mental capacity of mindfulness are able to keep their neural networks going where there should be, and the kind of distraction areas don't light up. Whereas with people with ADD, they light up all over the place.
I think mindfulness is the future of ADHD self-help and self-improvement, because what mindfulness is really you're just hacking your own brain. And I know a lot of folks that might get sort of a little bit turned off when they hear the word mindfulness or meditation. They might think of, Aum and, Buddhist monks, et cetera. Or they might think that, that's going to take a lot of practice to learn how to do that stuff, et cetera. And I just want to say to folks, mindfulness, to begin with, is as simple as just knowing that the voice in your head is not you. It's actually mostly your ego. If you just kind of shut up and listen to it, just sit down sometime in a chair, seriously, and just let your thoughts go and sort of try to observe the things that you think as you look out a window or you sit in a cafe and see people go by. You're going to find, if you actually, did a little list of the things that come into your mind, you will find that most of it is worries about the past, worries about the future. Oh, I'm going to do that thing. Oh, I hope I don't look silly, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of petty judgments. We all do it. That's like, oh, look at that junky car that guy's driving. Why is it? Or, I hate the design on this coffee cup, or whatever that is. And if you just get yourself to, as they say, be the witness more often, meaning just stand aside and listen to what that kooky voice is saying, you can have so much control. For instance, this brain hack that we just talked about, where you're going to do what you're doing now, if you aren't in charge of your own voice in your own head, you can't really do that brain hack. But when you know that when you see that text and you think, oh, you know what, let me get back to so-and-so, you can kind of recognize that that's really kind of your lazy inside self wanting to do that. It's sort of like your ego. When somebody likes your profile update, that's a little bit of an ego boost that you get. You get a little bit of dopamine by doing that. If you can start to separate all that crap out and really start to focus in on the things that are important, you will find that the only times that voice in your head is really, truly you is when you are creatively problem solving, when you're being loving or giving, and when you're being joyful or blissful. Those are the only times when that kooky voice is actually doing something that is truly you through and through.
Yep.
So give that some thought. And look, I hope that didn't sound too woo-woo to folks, but that is really the core of mindfulness.
Yeah, learning to pay attention to what you're paying attention to, and then
Bingo.
having a method of getting back to what you need to be paying attention to. I agree with you. I think mindfulness is a great skill that people can learn. Actually, one of my clients told me about an app. There's an app for that, right? Called Headspace. Here's 10 to 12 minutes. All you have to do is find that 10 minutes, a comfortable chair, and hit start, and it takes you there. So that's an easy thing that hopefully all of us can find 10 minutes. And actually, we've found probably about as much time as we have for today's talk. Alan, I'll be glad to have you back in a while more, and we can continue the conversation. My guest today has been Alan Brown, who is the creative force behind Crusher TV and ADD Crusher. He has a free ebook that you can find at addcrusher.com, which is 5 things you're doing every day that make your ADHD worse. And you'll recognize them as soon as you see them. Alan, it's been great to have you on the show. Thanks for your ideas and also the energy you put into helping people with ADHD figure it out.
Great to be here, and thank you so much for having me on.
Okay. Folks, that has been ADHD Focus. I invite you to tune in at the next show when we'll be talking with another expert about some of the real story behind ADHD. Until then, be well.